Hello, I'm Allie, a 29-year-old woman. I grew up in a single-parent home. My dad passed away when I was really young, and my mom never remarried. She worked hard every single day to feed me and clothe me, and she never failed to tell me about her struggles. I guess that was why I always felt so indebted to her, even when she treated me like trash. You see, my mom would complain about working so hard to feed me, yet she would constantly criticize me for my weight. I remember the first time I hated myself when I was 8, and my mom walked in on me eating a bar of chocolate after dinner. She yelled at me and told me that I was getting too fat and ugly for her liking. That never stopped. It only got worse as the years progressed. I tried to talk to her, but it never worked. All I got were more insults. The thing is that I wasn't even fat or ugly either. I weighed the normal weight for my age and height, and I got a fair amount of attention from boys. I just didn't understand why my mom hated me so much. I wanted to move out when I turned 18, but I didn't have the funds to do it, so I was stuck living with my mom while I attended college. It was at college that I had my first boyfriend. He was charming and handsome, your typical jock. I was madly in love with him. We got together in the second year and were together until a little after we graduated. I was convinced that he was going to be the one for me. Of course, my mom hated the fact that I had a boyfriend, and I noticed that she would always praise him, but in the same line, insult me. It did not help my already non-existent self-esteem. My boyfriend at that time and I had decided to wait a year and then get married. About 2 months after that decision, he suddenly broke up with me. I was confused and hurt. When I tried to ask him why, he just looked at me in disgust. At that moment, I wanted nothing but the comfort of my mother, so I ran into her arms and cried. Instead of comforting me, she laughed. Thank God he left. He deserves so much better than you. What? Oh yeah, that boy was a pretty tough nut to crack. What do you mean? Oh, it's nothing. He was madly in love with you, but with a little nudge from me, he was able to see the light. See the light? Do you mean, are you saying that you are the reason he broke up with me? What did you say to him? Oh, nothing you don't already know. I just opened his eyes to how ugly you are. When he saw it, he didn't want to marry you, so that's a win. What the hell is wrong with you? There's something seriously wrong in your head. How could you do this to your daughter? Stop being so dramatic, Allie. I know you're sad, but for your own sake, don't indulge in sweets. It'll make you gain more weight. That was what made me snap. I had worked part-time for a long while and had a decent amount of money saved up. That night, while my mom was asleep, I packed my things up and moved out of the house. I stayed at a friend's place until I got myself an apartment. It took a lot of time to heal after that, but when I did, I began to put myself out there a lot more. I began to feel confident in myself. Sometimes I would feel sad that my mom didn't even make an effort to call me or check up on me, but I got over it. I began to check in on her when I felt better, but I still kept the contact minimal. And then I met Holt. Holt and I bumped into each other at a coffee shop. We happened to sit in the same booth because everywhere else was full. We got to talking, and he turned out to be this amazing guy with a great sense of humor. We exchanged numbers, and well, the rest was history. Holt and I dated for around 3 years before deciding to make it official. In those 3 years, I got to meet and interact with Holt's family, who accepted me with open arms. That was a very healing experience. I told Holt about my history with my mom, and needless to say, he was not her biggest fan. I was so incredibly happy to be marrying Holt. I felt like I was on top of the world. It felt like nothing could bring me down. And Holt felt the same way. I could tell because he had a skip in his step, and he was, in general, really happy. It felt great that someone loved me unconditionally. My looks didn't matter, and part of me just wanted to shove that in my mother's face. I knew it would be petty, but when your own mother bullies you about your looks from when you were 5 until you're well into adulthood, you're going to want to be petty. Holt and I began planning the wedding immediately after we got engaged. I kept my idea of revenge on the back burner because I didn't know if it was morally right. About 2 months into planning our wedding, Holt asked me about who I wanted to invite. "So, who are you thinking of inviting?" "Well, all my close family and friends. I don't think I'll have a lot of people to invite." "All right. And I don't mean to be insensitive. When you say family, are you asking me if I'm going to invite my mom?" "Yeah, I know it's a sensitive topic, but I just want some confirmation." I was actually thinking of inviting her." "Oh, really? How come?" "Okay, I know this will sound mean, but I kind of want to rub it in her face, and I've become who she always told me I wouldn't be. Like she used to constantly tell me that no man would ever love me because of my looks. But here I am." "Oh, honey, I don't think that's mean at all. In fact, I fully support it. It's the least mean thing I've ever heard of, but it's perfect considering everything that your mother put you through." "Really? So you're okay with it?" "I am, as long as you are. Although I will say that if your mother says anything rude to you, I will interfere." "That's absolutely okay. Thanks for supporting me." "That's exactly what I'm here for, isn't it?" It felt great to have Holt validate my feelings. He knew about the extent of the damage that my mom did to my self-esteem, and yet he was more than willing to accommodate me. I felt a new wave of excitement then. I couldn't wait to brag to my mom about my marriage. I mean, not only was I marrying a rich and handsome man, but it was also a man who showed me in every way possible that he loved me more than anything. That was definitely going to embarrass my mom. For the next few days, as we finalized the technicalities of the invitation, like the look of it and the fonts and the paper, I couldn't help but wonder how my mom would react. Would she go red in the face from humiliation? Would she apologize? Would she actually for once be proud of me? I know that I seem naive to only be thinking about the best case scenarios, but I couldn't help it. Even though I barely contacted her anymore, she was still the only parent I had, and I wanted to have some form of relationship with her. Don't get me wrong, I would never have forgiven her that easily. She put me through years of therapy because of her bullying. I would make sure that she apologized to me properly and then cautiously build a relationship with her. Every time that I had a negative thought about her reaction, I pushed it away because I didn't know how I would have dealt with it. When it came time to print the invitations out, Holt and I sat together and hand wrote the names of our guests on the invitations. We wanted to do a traditional mail invitation. When I was writing my mother's name on the invitation, Holt was looking over my shoulder. That's when he held my hand to stop me. I looked at him in confusion. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, it's just..." "Do you not want me to invite my mom?" No, it's not that." "That's your mom's full name?" "Yeah, why?" "You guys have different last names." "Oh yeah, my mom kept her maiden name after she got married. I got my dad's name." "That's funny." "Why? What's wrong?" "I don't know if it's a coincidence, but I have an employee with that same exact name." "What? That's crazy." "Yeah, she plans to retire in another year or 2. "This is super weird. I mean, your mom's name and maiden name are not very popular ones, do you think?" "I don't know which company she works for, but do you maybe have files of your employees on hand with you right now, or even a staff picture?" "Oh yeah, of course I do." Holt shot up from the couch and ran into his office. My heart was pounding. What were the chances? I had always believed that the world was a small place, but for it to be this small was crazy. Holt came back with his laptop in hand and we sat down together to find a picture of the woman with the same name as my mom. Thankfully, the company had just had an event recently and a lot of pictures were taken. Holt and I scrolled through a lot of the pictures before I finally saw her. It was my mom. She was laughing at something someone had said while she held a drink in her hand. I just stared in shock for a couple of seconds before bursting out in laughter. Holt asked me if that was my mom, and I said that it was. Of course, Holt didn't know much about my mom, other than why I didn't keep much contact with her. Holt and I shared a laugh after that because it truly was amazing how wonderful the universe had aligned to put my mother in her place. So now, not only was I going to get married to a rich and handsome man who loved me, but I was also getting married to my mom's boss. That was something I definitely wanted to brag about. I hoped desperately for her sake that she was on her best behavior because she didn't know what she could be risking if she even tried to say anything against me. When we finally sent out the invites, we got a ton of responses almost immediately after they were delivered. I tracked them all to ensure that they reached safely. When I saw that my mom's invitation was accepted, I had hoped to get a quick response, but I got nothing for over a week. I began to lose hope that my mom was even going to come to my wedding. I tried to tell myself that it was no big deal, but like I said, she was my only parent, and getting married was the biggest event in anyone's life. Of course, I wanted my mom there, even if she just sat there silently. Holt could see that I was down and he comforted me. He reminded me that regardless of whether my mom came to the wedding, it would still be our day. We would still be surrounded by people that actually loved us. I began to feel better, but I wasn't fully convinced, and then I got my mom's RSVP and she said yes. That was it. She didn't try to say anything other than yes. Yeah, it hurt that she didn't even call to ask about who I was marrying or even ask about the wedding, but at least she would be there. I messaged her and asked her if she would have liked to be a part of the rehearsal dinner, and she once again replied with just a yes. Having my mom there was a win, a small win, but a win nonetheless. I felt happy. On the day of the rehearsal dinner, I was a nervous wreck. While I was also nervous for my big day, I was also nervous because I would be meeting my mom after 3 years for the first time. I made sure that my dress was perfect, that my hair was all in place, and that my makeup was properly blended. I couldn't help but think at that moment that I didn't even make that much of an effort for Holt. My mom walked into the rehearsal dinner and found me immediately. Holt was busy talking to someone else in some other place in the hall, so Mom never noticed him. She made a beeline straight to me. I felt my hands get clammy as she approached me, but I calmed myself down by reminding myself that no matter what happened, I had the upper hand. She greeted me with a hug before looking me up and down and laughing. I felt myself shrivel up on the inside. She was judging me again, and I felt like the helpless little girl that I was all those years ago. So, who's the unlucky guy? I see you still haven't become skinny, so you must have found some ugly hobo. Mom, that's beyond rude. Oh, please, whoever is choosing to marry you while you look like this must be clearly blind, and very unlucky. Actually, I think you're the unlucky one, Quinn. Holt? What are you doing here? What do you think? Didn't his name look familiar to you at all? Well, yeah, but I didn't think... You didn't think what? That your daughter would be capable of marrying someone like me because you think she's too ugly? Or am I enough of a hobo for me to be able to marry your daughter? No, well, I didn't mean it like that. Look, you're on thin ice. It's bad enough that you've insulted me, but if I hear you say one more word against Allie, I swear that I will make your life miserable. Okay, but I must say that Allie, you are an absolute piece of work for purposely going after my boss. What did you think it would do for you? Did you think that I would go easier on you? I didn't purposely go after your boss. We only happened to find out when we were sending the invites, but I did hope to mend our relationship. I guess that won't be happening. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the dinner and I'll see you tomorrow. With that, Holt and I walked away hand in hand. When we had gotten a good distance away from her and out of her eyesight, we dissolved into laughter. The look of absolute horror on her face when she saw Holt was a look I was never going to forget. Yeah, I hoped for a much nicer interaction, but to see her put in her place was actually a lot more satisfying. I was so caught up in my emotions that I didn't even notice Holt walk up to us, but I was really glad that he had managed to come to us right in time. The rest of the evening passed by without any other incident. The next day was hectic. However, when it came time for the ceremony, all I could feel was an immense amount of pride in myself. Seeing Holt stand at the altar with tears in his eyes as he watched me walk down the aisle made all the hours of getting ready worth it. I happened to scan the crowd and spotted my mom. She noticed I was looking at her and she pulled a face. That face was no ordinary face. It was the face she always made whenever I looked ugly or fat. I stumbled as I walked. For a second, I questioned everything I felt. I knew I looked beautiful, but to see my mom so outwardly tell me with her expression that I didn't made me feel very, very insecure. I looked at Holt and all my doubts vanished. He still looked at me like I was the only girl in the room. Other than that, there was no other hitch in the ceremony. Holt and I exchanged our vows through tears and the crowds cheered as we kissed. On our way to the reception hall, I told Holt about what had happened earlier in the ceremony. So, something happened earlier in the ceremony. What happened? Are you okay? Oh yeah, I'm fine right now. Okay, good. Then tell me what happened. Well, when I was walking down the aisle, I stumbled a little and almost fell. Yeah, I was a little worried. Yeah, well, I happened to look into the crowd and I saw my mother just making this face at me. It was the face she always made at me to tell me that I didn't look good. My God, what the hell is wrong with that woman? How could she do that to her own daughter on her special day? I don't know, but in that moment all I wanted to do was run away and cry. But then I took one look at you and I felt all right. That's right. If your mother does something like that again, just look at me. You're beautiful, and nothing your mother says or does will ever change that. Thanks. I needed that. And I was being serious when I said that. I would take action if your mom did something against you again. Now that I know just how much leverage I have over her, you best believe that I will make sure she learns her lesson properly. And I'll be okay with whatever you do. The reception started off well. We started with dancing and drinking and everyone was having an overall great time. Holt and I greeted all our guests and held conversations with them. I found myself feeling better and better with every interaction. At some point, I saw my mom walk into the hall, but she ignored us and walked straight to the bar. I felt kind of bad, but I figured being ignored was better than being told I looked ugly again, so I let it go. Holt kept me by his side the entire time. I was grateful for that because it was a great distraction. Finally, it came time for the toasts. Holt started it off with a heartfelt toast to us and our relationship, which honestly made me cry. I followed after him and I was happy to see that I was able to make him feel the same emotions he made me feel with my toast. If there was one thing to mention about the toast time, it was that with every toast that was made to Holt and me, my mom scoffed. It got her a lot of dirty looks, but that did not stop her. At some point, she stood up and said that she had a toast to give to us too. My heart dropped. I knew my mother and I knew how evil she could be. I knew that this would not end well. Holt held my hand and when I looked at him, his jaw was clenched. At least we both felt the same anxiety at that moment. My mom began to talk about how I was undeserving of Holt. She praised Holt for the man he was and conveniently brought up how he was her boss, and a very good one at that. When she spoke of me, she kept talking about how ugly I was and how I should be grateful that Holt even spared me a glance. I felt sick. How could she say that? Holt looked like he was going to burst a vein from how hard he was restraining himself. The rest of our guests looked appalled. Finally, when my mother finished her god-awful speech, she sat down with a satisfied smirk on her face. She was happy with the reactions she got. Thankfully, the rest of the evening proceeded without anyone even mentioning what my mom had said. Holt and I tried our best to put everything behind us just for the night. Even when we finally got back home that night, neither of us spoke about it. There was an air of sadness, but we chose to ignore it because we were happy that we were finally legally and officially together. The next day, Holt left for work. He told me that something urgent had come up and he promised to be back by noon, so I didn't mind. True to his word, Holt came back home by noon and we settled into the couch to watch some of our favorite shows. An hour or so later, I heard a banging on the front door. Along with the banging, I heard my mom yelling for me to come out and open the door. I was confused and looked at Holt. I felt his urgent business had something to do with my mom. I walked to the door and opened it. "You absolute wretch! What did you say to him?" "Huh? What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb. You made him fire me." "Holt fired you?" "Yeah, and I'm sure it's because of something you said. You're so stupid that you never know what you ever say. I'm going to have to stop you there, Quinn. I don't think I need to remind you of your speech from yesterday." "But I praised you." "And you completely dissed your own daughter, who is my wife. How did you possibly think that was okay? I told you I'd make you regret it if you even said a word against her." "Whatever. You can't fire me for that. I'll sue you." "You've also been highly negligent with your work. I was going to fire you anyway, but kept you for a few months only because you are Allie's mother. Since you have no respect for her, I see no reason why I should even help you out. Now, if you'll excuse us, we're busy right now. Goodbye." I couldn't believe it. Holt stood up for me in a way that I hadn't even considered. Holt held me in his arms as I cried. I finally felt free. I felt so valued and respected, and I knew that I never wanted anything less than that from then on. I didn't care to find out what happened to Mom after that, and neither did Holt. The two of us continued to live our lives in blissful ignorance of her whereabouts. I've learned just how important it is to have and enforce your boundaries. Don't let anyone ever treat you like you're worth nothing, because I promise you, to someone else, you mean the world.